We shall move on now to learning outcomes and formulation of specific objectives. We have a corresponding activity for this, and the activity will have to be graded, so please take note of how we shall formulate the specific objectives. Let's fall back again on the outcome-based education. The OBE, as we said earlier, is an approach to authentic assessment. What do we mean by authentic? In the layman's vocabulary, authentic is genuine, real, or assessment of real life situations. So OBE is an approach to authentic assessment based on the principle that the student should be assessed against predetermined standards. When we say predetermined standards, we mean criterion reference, and this is what DepEd is mandating teachers to use. In our time, it was the grading is norm reference, now it's criterion reference. I will repeat, assessment is supposed to be done against predetermined standards, and these standards have already been set by DepEd. Rather than against each other. So we don't assess students, not anymore, we don't assess students against each other. In OBE, schools identify important long-range outcomes. I will repeat, these had been identified already by DepEd. And these long-range outcomes are used to guide and shape the curriculum across grade levels, including kinder. So kinder to grade 12. OBE emphasizes the importance of clear objectives. Again, I will repeat the term alignment. Clear objectives and the alignment of objectives, activities, and evaluation procedures. Let's go to identifying learning outcomes. An instructional objective should be a clear and concise statement of the skill or skills that students are expected to perform after a unit of instruction. A complete instructional objective includes, please take note of this because this is what you're going to do. An instructional objective includes, first, an observable behavior. What's that? The action verb is specifying the learning outcome. Next, it has to have special conditions under which the behavior must be displayed. And the third one, the performance level considered sufficient to demonstrate mastery. In other books, these conditions, these elements are called the A, B, C, D of learning outcomes or learning objectives. What's the A for? The audience or the learner. The B is the behavioral objective. The C is the condition under which the learning must happen. And the D is the degree of proficiency expected of the students. All right? So, we have any objective that we have formulated has to show the action verb, the condition, and the performance level. Now I have highlighted the statement in red because this is very important. Learning outcomes should not be confused with learning activities. I have seen a lot of objectives in lesson plans where the activities and the outcomes are mixed. Activities are not demonstration of outcomes. All right, we will see that in the next slides. A carefully formulated objective has observable learning outcome, conditions, and criterion level. Let's dissect these objectives. I have 3 here. No? Sige. Without reference to class notes. What's this? Oh, I'll finish first. No? Without reference to class notes, correctly describe 4 out of 5 alternative sources of energy discussed in class. Let's dissect this. Does it have observable learning outcome? What is it? Does it have conditions? Does it have criterion level? Let's dissect this one. What's without reference to class notes? What's that? That's the condition. Correctly describe. That's the observable learning outcome. Can you see a person describing? Can you see it? All right. So that is observable. Correctly describe. That's a qualitative description of what you are asking the students to be able to perform. Correctly describe. How many? 4 out of 5 alternative sources of energy discussed in class. There may be a lot of sources of energy, but you have been able only to discuss probably 5. So if a student mentions something that has not been discussed in class, that does not count. Because what is required here is it has been discussed in class. What's the standard or degree of performance being asked? At least 4 out of 5 alternative sources of energy discussed in class. So it's very specific what you are asking the students to be able to produce or demonstrate as the criterion level. Correctly describe 4 out of 5 alternative sources of energy discussed in class. So this objective is complete. This is the kind of objective that I would like to see in the paper that you're going to submit. Let's go to the next. The student will reply in grammatically correct English 95% of the English questions spoken orally during an examination. Let's dissect. What is the observable learning outcome? Reply. The student will reply. What's the condition? What's the condition? English questions is spoken orally during an examination. So it's confined to what has been spoken orally during an examination. What's the criterion level? 95% of those questions is spoken orally during an examination. 95%. Grammatically correct. Grammatically correct, that's qualitative. 95%, that's quantitative. Degree of what? Degree of, that's the criterion. Degree of performance expected. So is this complete? That's complete. Completely, carefully formulated objective. Given a human skeleton, what is this? This is the condition. The student will identify, what's this? The observable learning outcome. At least 40 of the bones correctly. There are so many bones, the student is only expected to identify 40 of them. So is this clear now? A formulated objective should have all of these three elements: observable learning outcome, conditions, and criterion level. Now, I said earlier on that the outcome should not be confused with activities. Let's try this. By the end of the semester, the learner will identify pictures of words that sound alike. Is this a learning outcome? Identify pictures of words that sound alike. Yes or no? Yes, it's a learning outcome. The learner will demonstrate an appreciation of poetry. Activity or outcome? The demonstration is a learning outcome. The student will subtract one-digit numbers with 80% accuracy. Sorry for the typographical error. The student will subtract one-digit number with 80% accuracy. One-digit numbers. Okay, that's correct. The student will subtract one-digit numbers with 80% accuracy. What's the condition? What's degree of performance? What's the verb? I think it's clear enough. Okay, you can put the answer on your paper. Student will show a knowledge of correct punctuation. Will show a knowledge, show, that's a verb, knowledge of what? Correct punctuation. It's not complete, but it's a learning outcome. The student will practice the multiplication tables. Will practice the multiplication table. What's that? Is that a learning activity or outcome? Will practice. It's a learning activity. Will practice. No show of a learning outcome there. Next, the student will sing the Lupang Hinirang. The same. It's simply a learning activity. No outcome there. Okay. Clear? Is it clear with you? How learning outcome is differentiated from learning activities. Let's look at this, some more examples. Learning outcomes versus learning activities. The learning outcomes, as you know, are supposed to be the ends, the goal, what we intend the students to be able to acquire, the goal, the end. The learning activities are the means to reach the ends. So let's look at the words used here. Learning outcomes: identify, recall, list, write. At the end of the activity, you should be able to list, you should be able to recall, you should be able to list, you should be able to write the ends. Let's look at the activities. Let's look at the means. Watch, study, listen, read. These are the means to an end that you specify or you want the students to meet. Let's try this then. Fixing a toy. What's that? Activity or outcome? All right, activity. Reciting the 4 components of a good essay. reciting the 4 components with an S, please, of a good essay. What's that? That's the end. Practicing the violin. That's a means, simply an activity. Recalling the parts of speech. That's N. Reciting the alphabet. That's an activity. Do you still have any confusion in your mind? It's easy enough to identify. Just think, is that an end or a means to an end? Let's differentiate observable from unobservable behavior. We have a list here on the first column, observables. Can we see list? Of course we can see that, no? Can we see reciting? Yes. Can we see building? Yes. Drawing? Yes. All of these are observable. What about value? To value the. It's unobservable. To appreciate the. To know the. To understand the. All right. All of these are unobservable. So if we are going to formulate objectives, we go for observables. Right? Let's try this. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Would you like to do this on your own? Okay. I'll not give the answer. You do that on your own. Put that on your paper. And you submit that to me together with the exercise for today. Observable, unobservables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nakulangan ng isa. Okay, try that. What are you going to do? Submit that together with what you're going to do. I'll ask you to do something, and it will be graded. Now, we said that the assessment must be aligned with the objectives. So we will try to see if the test item given is aligned with the objectives. Let's take the first one. The objective is recall the names of the capitals of the provinces of the Philippines. There's so many of them. Okay, that's the objective. How would you know that the student is able to do that? So the test item would be something like name capitals of the 6 provinces in Region 5. Is that aligned with the objective? Name capitals of the 6 provinces in Region 5. Of course it is. So pasado, yan. Let's look at the second one. The student will write complete instructional objectives, including behavior, conditions, and criteria. The test item given is Describe why instructional objectives must contain unobservable behavior, conditions, and criteria. Beautifully formulated. Very good. Describe why instructional objectives must contain unobservable behavior, conditions, and criteria. However, does this match the objective? Look at it again. What's the objective? The student will write complete instructional objectives, including behavior, conditions, and criteria. The test is describe why instructional objectives must contain unobservable behavior conditions, okay? As you can see, they do not match. Therefore, no matter how beautifully constructed the test item is, it's not valid measure of the realization of objectives. Clear? Let's go to the third one. The objective is, given a written story, list the main events in chronological order. Given a written story, list the main events in chronological order. The test item is, from the story provided, list the main events in chronological order. Does the test item match the objective? Yes, of course it does. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have to match the test items to the objectives for the test items to be considered valid. Okay. In matching test items to objectives, we also must consider the test format to use. Let's look at the objective. Given a story, the student can recognize the meaning of all new words. And I have given 2 examples here of words that the students must know to understand the story. The test item is, circle the letter that represents the correct meaning of the following words. For number 1, intention. And the options are A, B, C, D. Does it match with the objective? Story can recognize the meaning of all new words. Of course it does. Let's look at the second one. Pareho. Word is crisis, and you have A, B, C, D as options. Okay, therefore the test item matches the objective. In some books, if you will look at the options, let's look at the options: desire, need, direction, command. Some books suggest that you must have a logical order for the options. What could be logical order? Because they are not in logical order. For names, for concepts, logical order could be alphabetical arrangement. So that command would be A, direction, no, command, desire, direction, and need, to satisfy what some books say. Ulitin ko po, some books suggest that the options must be logically arranged, and one logical arrangement could be alphabetizing the options. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at this test format. The objective is the student can associate the characteristics of leading characters with their names. Okay? Let's look at this. If you will note, there is etc. there, no? Meaning I should not stop at 3 or D. Okay? Because one of the principles of test construction of matching type is you have to have at least 7 items, but no more than 15 items for matching type test. And the options to select from must at least be 2 more than the test item. The test items are numbered. The options or description are in letters. So the description must be more than the, okay? But let's look at the test item. Ulit po, ang objective, the student can associate the characteristics of leading characters with their names. The first column is a list of names of the main characters in Huckleberry Finn. First column. Descriptions of the main characters are listed in the second column. In the space provided, write the letter of the description that matches its character. All right? Can we say that the test item matches the objective? Can associate the characteristics of leading characters with their names? Of course, it does. And the instruction is clear, very clear. Instructing the reader of what to find in the first column, what to find in the second column, no? And where to write their answer. Okay? Again, if we are going to follow strictly some books, the construction of matching type, it would say, or the guideline would say, that the options or the list of answers to choose from must be homogeneous in content, and also the set must be arranged in a logical manner. Okay? Test item format to use. Let's look at the objective. The student can write a plausible alternative ending to a story. The student can write a plausible alternative ending to a story. This is a high-level cognition. This tests high-level cognition. What is it? How would you categorize this in Krathwohl's cognitive dimension? It's creation. The student can write a plausible alternative ending to a story. Okay? The test item is, you have read the story of Huckleberry Finn. In 40 words, write a different ending to the story that would be believable. Matched or not? Very much so. All right, so I have illustrated to you the requirement that the test item must match the objective for that item to be considered valid. I will repeat, no matter how beautifully written the test item is, if it doesn't match the objective, it's not valid. Test format, true or false. The objective is the students will recognize whether certain events occurred. The test item is, here is a list of incidents in Huckleberry Finn. Circle T if it happened in the story, and F if it did not. The thieves were killed in the storm on the river. Jim gained his freedom. Tom broke his leg. This is beautiful, no? Does it match? Does the set match? Set of true or false? The students will recognize whether certain events occurred. Yes. The test items and the test format match with the objective. Okay, therefore, what do we say? The test item is valid. Let's go to suggestions for writing true, false items. First suggestion, the desired method of marking true or false should be clearly explained before students take the test. Some test makers or developers would say in the instruction, correct minus wrong. Any incorrect answer will be deducted from the correct answers. Is this justifiable? Some test developers say it's not. So to them, deducting incorrect from correct responses is a no-no thing, because they say that we are testing the mastery of the students, and the correct answers are tests of the mastery. So you shouldn't be deducting incorrect. What should you do? Analyze, why the answers are incorrect. For all we know, it's a flawed test item. For all we know, it's your fault, as a writer of test items. So, the desired method of marking true or false should be clearly explained before students take the test. Next, construct statements that are definitely true or definitely false without additional qualifications. If opinion is used, attribute it to some source. Construct statements that are definitely true or false. So, hindi ambiguous. It cannot be true sometimes and true and false at other times. It should be completely true, completely false at all times. Now, we say that opinions should not find their place in a true or false. Opinion yan. So, hindi facts. Hindi yan dapat daw na ilagay sa true or false. However, if you indeed would like to put that under true or false, you can, except that you have to put in the source. Like, for example, the place of the liars is in hell. Is it true or false? True or false? What if I am an unbeliever? I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in heaven. Okay? I can always argue. I can always say I don't want to answer that. There is no hell, there is no heaven. However, if you put in the source, then you can compel the student to answer. You say, according to the Bible, say the verse, say the chapter, the place of the liar is in hell. So it's already factual because you have put in the reference. Is this understood? Whose opinion is it? Karl Marx? Whose opinion is it? So put it in there. Okay? Cite the source if you must put in an opinion in your true or false set of statements. Next, use relatively short statements and eliminate extraneous materials. So keep your statements in true or false short as possible. And for number 4, keep true and false statements at approximately the same length. And be sure that there are approximately equal numbers of true and false items. So, if you have 20 items, you can split it into 10 true, 10 false, or 11 true, 9 false, not 1 true and then 19 false. Okay, as much as possible, equal in length and what? As much as possible, approximately equal numbers of true and false items. Number 5, avoid using double negatives. They take extra time to decipher and are difficult to interpret. What is an example of a double negative? It is untrue that the non-believers do not believe in. Ilang negative na yon, no? It is untrue. So why don't you just say it is false instead of saying it is not untrue? It is not untrue. Well, that's double negative. So if it is not untrue, then it is what? False. Why don't you just say that? Not untrue. Therefore, it is. Just use the word true or false instead of saying untrue, not untrue. Avoid the following: verbal clues, absolutes, and complex sentences. Verbal clues like the use of a and none, an, before the answer. Like if you say a, then you are already giving the clue that the answer starts in a vowel. A consonant rather. And if you use an as an article, then you're giving the clue that the answer starts with a vowel. Verbal clues. Broad, general statements that are usually not true or false without further qualifications. Broad, general statements that are usually not true or false. No? The sun is a ball of fire. Kahit sino naman yata ay makakasagot niyan. Broad, general statements that are usually not true or false without further qualifications. In other words, avoid general statements. In other words, statements of general knowledge. Kahit sino ay pwedeng sumagot. Kasi general knowledge nga. Avoid terms denoting indefinite degree, like large, long time, regularly, absolutes, never, only, always. These are to be gotten rid of in true or false statements. How large? How long time ago? So be definite. How regularly? Twice a week? All right, so please avoid indefinite degree. Also avoid placing items in a systematic order, like the first 5 is true, the next 5 is false, or TF, TF, TF. You're establishing a pattern. So don't place statements in a systematic order. And lastly, avoid taking statements directly from the text and presenting them out of context. Taking statements directly from the text. So, ayaw mo nang umisip, kumuha ka ng babasahin at saka you just lifted the statements from. If the student has read the text, then surely she's going to get 100%. Dinaanan na yon ang mata niya sa nabasa niyang libro. Kinuha mo, sinalpak mo, nilagay mo sa true or false, no? All right. Pag-isipan natin, it's difficult. It's really difficult to construct true or false statements. Kala nyo madali lang yan, no? Mahirap po. Okay, let's go to the next. Suggestions for writing matching items. Keep both the list of descriptions and the list of options fairly short and homogeneous. They should fit both on the same page. Hindi yung kalahati ay nasa isang page, ang kalahati ay nasa another page. No? Mahirapan. Sasakit ang liig ng mga bata. So, one set of matching type should be placed on one page. On the same page. Title the list. So may column ka. Ano yan na column na yan? Capitals. Ano ang susunod na column? Provinces. So title the list to ensure homogeneity and arrange the descriptions and options in some logical order. So kung alphabetized, alphabetize it. No? Kung mga numbers yan, what could be some logical arrangement for numbers? The numbers could be arranged according to magnitude, from the smallest to the biggest. Kung mga formulas yan, maybe you could arrange the formulas from the simplest to the most complex. Now, if this is possible, you're probably including too wide a variety in the exercise. Try 2 or more exercises. Sabi dito, title the list to ensure homogeneity and arrange the options in some logical order. So halimbawa, meron kang 25 na items, lahat matching type. Diyos ko, ang hirap naman yan. Ano? Sasakit ang liig ng mga nagbabasa or examinees. So what can you do? Maybe you can split it into 15, 10 or 12, 13. 2 sets of matching type. Ulitin po natin, hindi bababa sa 7 na mga items. Hindi lalagpas sa 15. So the minimum is 7. The maximum is 15 for a set of matching type items. Next, make sure that all the options are plausible destructors for each description to ensure homogeneity of lists. Options are plausible destructors. So, wag kayong maglalagay dyan ng out of the blue. Wala na kayong naisip. No? Kung ano na lang nilagay ninyo doon. So, hindi naman dapat na isama dahil hindi naman homogeneous. Hindi dapat nakasama. Wala siya sa cluster. No? Alright, so, they have to be homogeneous in content. Next, kasi kung maglalagay ka dyan ng out of the blue, no? Maglalagay ka ng out of the cluster, then definitely, ano na yun? Give away. Kasi hindi talaga yung pipiliin ng mga bata. Hindi yung kasama. Oh, like, lahat pangalan. Tapos i-insertan mo ng date. Date of an event. Pangalan ng tao, nilagyan mo ng 2 dates of an event. At nakalagay sa isang yung mga pangalan. So, definitely, discarded na yung dalawa as definitely wrong. Ulitin po natin, homogeneous in content and format. Both the descriptors and the stem. Destructors and the list of descriptions or list of options. No? They must be homogeneous. Take note, the list of descriptions should contain the longer phrases or statements, while the options should be identified by the letter. So, yung mahahaba na descriptions, doon siya sa column A. Yung maiikli, yung options, doon siya sa column B. All right. Maliwanag po, the list of descriptions should contain the longer phrases or statements, while the options should be identified by the letter. Kung identified by the letter, di doon siya sa column B. Each description in the list should be numbered. So, 1, 2, 3, nasa A siya, no, column A. Each is an item. And the list of options should be identified by the letter. Ang tawag natin, ibang books would call the list of description and the list as the stimulus. The response, yung options ay called response. Stimulus, response. Dito, list of description and then list of options. Number 5, include more options than descriptions. So kung ang descriptions ay 10, ang options should be at least 12 or 13. If the option list is longer than the description list, it is harder for students to eliminate options. If the option list is shorter, some options must be used more than once. Always include some options that do not match any of the descriptions, or some that match more than one or both. In the direction, specify the basis for matching and whether options can be used more than once. Have any questions? Sige. Have any questions? Email me. Suggestions for writing multiple choice. Here are some guidelines for writing multiple choice items. The stem of the item, or other books would call it the prompt. The stem of the item should clearly formulate a problem. Include as much of the item as possible, keeping the response options as short as possible. However, include only the material needed to make the problem clear and specific. Be concise. Don't add extraneous information. Okay? That's clear now. Huwag habaan naman masyado ang stem. Ang stem. Kung masasabi mo in 10 words, ang sinabi mo na 15, use the 10 words without losing the meaning. Use as short as possible. Statements in the test, use as short as possible. No? Be short as possible. Be brief. Avoid extra words that do not add meaning. Number 2, be sure that there is only one and only one correct or clearly best answer. Kaya pakaisipin ang ilalagay na options. Be sure, wrong answers. What do we call the wrong options or answers? Distractors. Be sure the distractors, other books call it distractors, pairs. Other books, distractors, whatever. Be sure wrong answer choices or distractors are plausible. Eliminate unintentional grammatical clues and keep the length and form of all the answer choices as much as possible equal. Rotate the position of the correct answer from item to item randomly. Item number 1, Asia, ang correct answer. Item number 2, B. Item number 3, A. Item number 4, C, etc. Should not be patterned. Lahat A sa number 1 to 5. Lahat B sa problem. Okay, that's pattern. And that's a violation of the guideline. Number 4, use negative questions or statements only if the knowledge being tested requires it. So we avoid as much as possible negative questions or statements. In most cases, it is more important for the student to know what a specific item or of information is rather than what it is not. So again, negative. Avoid the use of negatives. In most cases, it is more important for the student to know what a specific item of information is, rather than what it is not. 5. Include from 3 to 5 options. 2 to 4 distractors plus 1 correct answer. Perhaps ang 3 options ay napakaliit. Siguro ang 3 options would be okay for grade 3, grade 2. Pero grade 4 siguro dapat mga 4 na options na yan, ano? Hanggang college 4 to 5 options. It's not necessary to provide additional distractors for each item. This usually leads to poorly constructed distractors that add nothing to test validity and reliability. Okay. Next, to increase the difficulty of a multiple choice item, increase the similarity of content among the options. Similarity of content among the options. Number 7, use option none of the above. You see this sometimes in tests, don't you? Use the option none of the above sparingly. Pwedeng gamitin, pero wag naman lahat ng items meron ng none of the above or all of the above. No, you can use this but sparingly. Use the option none of the above sparingly and only when the keyed answer can be classified unequivocally as right or wrong. Don't use this option when asking for a best answer. Ulit, don't use the option none of the above when asking for a best answer. Next, number 8, avoid using all of the above. It is usually the correct answer and makes the item too easy for the students with partial information. Okay, clear? None of the above can be used sparingly, but all of the above, as much as possible, let's avoid using it. Okay? Now, so that we can be assured that our test is comprehensive, meaning it covered everything that we have taken up in class, then we must prepare what we call a test blueprint. Also, if we want to have a balance of difficult and easy items, moderately difficult items, we need to have a table of specifications, because the TOS, as we call it, can demonstrate to us, can show to us balance in the items that we have given. You will be given a very good example of a test blueprint as part of your kit, learning kit. I am using one that is used in DepEd. TOS, there are many, many ways by which we can prepare a TOS. However, the DepEd suggests the kind of TOS that must be prepared by teachers. By the way, you cannot escape preparing TOS because it's required of every teacher in DepEd, and more so in private schools. Before we prepare our test items, be sure that we have prepared a very good TOS. Where do we base our TOS? Doon po sa syllabus natin at saka yung na-take up natin. No? Unless, take note of this, unless your syllabus includes the readings that you are not able to take up in class for one reason or another, pero naka-include yan sa syllabus ninyo, then pwede kayong magbigay ng test item. However, wala naman sa syllabus ninyo. Hindi nyo naman tinake up. Nilagay nyo sa test ninyo. Ang test item na yan, invalid yan. Hindi po valid yan. You are doing your students an injustice for putting into the test items that you did not discuss in class. Okay. So the test blueprint, what's another word for the test blueprint? Table of specifications, your TOS in short. The test blueprints ensures that the teacher will not overlook details considered essential to a good test. TOS ensures that the test will sample whether learning has taken place across the range of content areas covered in class and readings. And cognitive process. Ano itong cognitive processes? Knowledge, comprehension, etc. Considered important. And TOS ensures that your test will include a variety of items that tap different levels of cognitive complexity. Okay? You will be shown an example that is used in DepEd. I asked somebody to do it and I found it a very good TOS, and I'm going to give it to you as an example. Test blueprint. Okay. The test blueprint consists of content outline. List the topic and important objectives included under the topic. It is for these objectives that we will write test items. What else? Categories. What are these? These are as a reminder or a check on the cognitive complexity of the test. Ilan ba ang knowledge dyan? O recalling? Ilan ba ang understanding? Ilang items ang applying? Analyzing, evaluating, creating. Ngayon, kung wala ka namang creating, huwag mo nang ilalagay yan sa TOS. No? Kung wala ka namang evaluating, huwag mo nang ilalagay. Yun lang po na cognitive dimensions na meron ka, yun ang ilalagay mo as heading. Under categories. Function. The TOS should convey how many items are to be constructed for which objectives and content topics. For which objectives and content topics. Whether the test will reflect a balanced picture of what was taught. The TOS would also convey whether all topics and objectives will be assessed and their level of cognitive complexity. Okay? Our next question is, after we shall have scored the papers, what do we do? So, you will have to have scratch paper, computational tools, your calculator. Walang calculator, pwede na rin yung inyong gadget. Basta meron po kayong gagamitin sa susunod nating paghaharap. on the screen. Okay?